Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hello, and welcome to Champions of Psychology, a show with the goal of openly talking about mental health and gaming, presented by Codename Entertainment and TakeThis.org. Every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on twitch.tv/CNE Games, Mitra Jordan and Raffael Boccamazzo, aka Dr. B, talk about mental health and how gaming affects us. If you're this live in the chat, you leave a question that I, Treavor Bettis, will ask them later in the show. And our topic today is about being a good listener. But before we get to that, why don't we listen to who these two fine folks are?
I'm Mitra Jordan. I am a registered clinical counselor in Victoria, BC. I enjoy games of all kinds, tabletop, video, you name it. If you know, you know. And I work with a wide variety of people. I do a lot of couple and family work. And sometimes we end up talking about games as they relate to mental health.
And who are you?
What?
And who are you, my friend?
God dang it. He's going to do this the whole episode. He's going to do it the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't listening. What?
How to be a good listener is how not to be like Dr. B today, apparently.
I'm impish.
Oh, yes. You're impious, too. What's your point?
Hey everybody, I'm Raffael Boccamazzo, better known as Dr. B for long Italian name reasons. I'm a clinical psychologist in Washington State. I'm the clinical director at the oldest mental health nonprofit to serve the game community, Take This. Go ahead and check out all the free resources we have over at TakeThis.org, including some fantastic stuff on burnout as a content creator. I'm also an expert on the applied use of role-playing games in clinical and learning settings, consultant for the channel How to ADHD. I enjoy long walks on non-beaches because there's sand. It's a texture thing. I was born at a very young age. And I'm here to, I don't know what's going. I am in a mood today.
You are in a mood.
He's not alone.
I'm sassy to begin with, but I am just off the wall today, and it's going to be an interesting journey.
Maybe it's because, we got an announcement, and we don't usually have announcements on
Do we have an announcement?
And so it's kind of throwing you off a little bit. We do have an announcement. Hey, everybody. We're going to be doing a charity drive coming up next week, and you will be able to donate to help Take This, and in exchange, you will be getting a Champions of Psychology t-shirt. We finally did it. There are going to be there's going to be two colors of t-shirts and sweatshirts. And the link is going to go live in a blog on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And you'll be able to go in there. You can just purchase through that site. They will send you the shirt. There's also going to be a few Idle Champions and Bushwhacker 2 things as well. And that's all that you need to do. You will get the shirt, and the proceeds will go to Take This to help them out.
But I want to hype up the apparel here because Oh no, it's super cool. It's super cool. Not just because I designed it, but it's super cool because you get the Champions of Psychology logo on your I think I put it, on the left side of the chest. And underneath it, in Latin, semper dependit, which stands for it always depends.
What is essentially the tagline of this show, because we say it before answering every question.
Amongst all of the other things, Dr. Kelly Dunlap at Take This, our community director, in addition to be a game dev, a community manager, a graphic designer, a clinical psychologist, a researcher, also speaks Latin.
That does not surprise me.
Because of course she does.
Of course she does.
And
She's
so
pretty amazing.
Dr. Dunlap helped with that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we're very excited about this, and the charity is going to go for 1 week. So starting Monday, was that May 15th at 10 a.m.
days.
And then going to the following Monday. So the blog will be on the CNE website. We're gonna have a tweet out about it, and everything. We'll remind you next week on this episode, and have the link in the chat. You'll have plenty of opportunities to go grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt. And yeah, we're just really happy to not only get
pumped
to have t-shirts, but to get to help out take this. So I hope you all are excited.
Yep, all the funds raised help us with our mental health mission, and we've been making a lot more free resources available for the community, and that's what this is going to end up going towards, and we're very excited about that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to today's topic, which is being a good listener.
No.
Okay, well, I mean, all right, have a good one, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
See you next week. Talk more about that shirt.
No, it's okay. Okay. We're talking about being a good listener because being a good listener is hard. Like, okay, and I feel there's this little annoyance that creates like a pinched nerve in my soul every time I hear it. And I'm sure Mitra has this too. When people, when they talk to therapists, and therapists are like, no, it's really hard to do what I do. And they're like, but you just listen to people all day. It's so hard to be a really good, active listener for people. And we're going to talk today about how we as friends, as community members, and how just good human beings, we can do that better. Because it's an important factor. Feeling heard is just such an important factor in feeling that sense of community and belonging that we all want.
There was when I was a parking lot attendant, sometimes like my coworkers and whatnot would just come out, because I was a parking lot attendant for a restaurant. My coworkers would come out and they would just vent about what was going on in the restaurant or about their day. I would have people that would just walk by that would stop and just start talking to me about stuff that was going on, and so many people were just like, "You ever thought about going into therapy? Like, you're really good at this." And I'm trying to find a therapist right now. Thank you. Listen, that's all I was doing. I was not giving them advice. I was not giving them anything. I was just someone sitting there to listen to, and I'm like, I think there's more to it than that.
There is.
Yeah.
There's plenty more, but it really starts with giving people the space to hear themselves. That's one of the things that good listening does.
No, absolutely. It makes people feel connected and accepted. Really, really good listening allows people to feel that sense of, because we've said this before, and a sense of belongingness, inclusion and connection and community and support, it is one of the most universally helpful things in mental wellness and resilience against stressors, knowing that you have support and a community around you. So yeah, it's just one of those things being able to do. And if we do it wrong, it can feel disconnecting.
Hugely. And dismissive.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. And like, you heard me, but you didn't really hear me. You didn't really take it in or validate, or you move too quickly. Well, we'll talk about what wrong things, what interferes with good listening, as well as what creates it. Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah, because I mean, when you think about it, I'm gonna get a little technical here for some folks. We're gonna talk about Martin Buber and the I-thou relationship, the philosophical concept from there. No, I'll break it down.
Yeah, I didn't hear this yesterday. I didn't even hear this morning. He always surprises me. What can I tell you?
Well, no, if you think about it, within any dyad of people, there's like three things that need to be taken into consideration. There's your needs, the other person's needs, and then the communal needs. And that's basically 3 points of failure in any listening dyad.
Potential failure.
Yeah. Yes, 3 points of potential failure. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's not.
Don't
It's
doom
not
us from the very beginning.
Yeah, no, I'm doomed.
Dude.
God, I don't know what it is. Maybe either I forgot to take my ADHD meds this morning, or I didn't have enough caffeine, or both. But I was about to go into the Invader Zim doom song.
Oh, I was right there with you.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Big hundo. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do
So-
the full pitched voice and everything. Sorry, Mitra,
Mhm.
save us.
One thing about good listening is being able to bring yourself back from a tangent to keep your attention focused on what's actually relevant in front of you. So I think we're going to be doing a lot of supporting each other to show good listening and bringing ourselves back from ourselves, apparently. So
I'm not saying she's talking about us, Treavor.
I
But
am.
I think she might be talking
I'm 100%
about
saying
us.
she's talking about us. Yeah. I
I
picked
might
up
also
on
be talking about me.
that.
Well, you're bringing up a good point, though. And that is that's both knowing what your strengths and what your challenges are in interpersonal communication. And I think that's a really worthy thing to consider, is under what circumstances can I be a good listener?
Yeah.
If at the end of so Mondays and Tuesdays are my 12-hour days, because I have my day job and my clients afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And, at this point, talking to Jessica, it's just generally understood Tuesday nights after I'm done with 2 12-hour days, not the time I'm going to be able to be the most attentive listener.
Yeah, that is very true. For me, it's Wednesdays and Thursdays. Boy, we've really knocked out the week between us, haven't we?
Uh-huh.
But those are my busiest client days.
Mm-hmm.
I see some clients as well on Monday and Tuesday, but they don't tend to be as long. So yeah, Wednesdays and Thursdays. I don't think, unless I really have to, I can't actually manage a serious conversation or even a good argument. It'll be a bad argument, but I'm definitely not in a place to do my best listening with family and friends. Obviously, Absolutely. I'll do it if it's needed, but yeah, it's just a lot more mental load those times. So yeah, so there's knowing that part of us, what we're capable of and when. And there's also if the speaker can set expectation. Sometimes that's really helpful. It's the last thing I want clients to have to do, honestly. Sometimes people will come into session and they'll be all over the place with a lot. And they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm everywhere, all at once. And I'll be like, no, actually, that's my job. My job is to help pull out the themes and just, this is where you get to say everything. And we can do that in our personal lives as well. But for a lot of people, it's really helpful to understand what it is your speaker needs from you.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
The person speaking is in the center. Well, we'll get into ring theory in a minute, but the person speaking is the person who's sharing what they need to share. And if we can hold the space for them, we are better listeners. And if we can also understand what sort of feedback they're looking for, that can be helpful to us in terms of how to be the best listener we can be.
And you know what? I want to put a caveat on something here, because I think a lot of what we're talking about today and a lot of what you and the three of us planned yesterday rests on the assumption that we are making good faith attempts to listen. Because there are a lot of times, and there are people out there who can seem like they're listening to us, but in fact are doing it for manipulative means. And this is how gaslighting can happen, where people can turn what they're listening to on it. And so I want to throw out there that really we're talking about it in good faith efforts.
Yep.
That we are attempting to be the good friends, the good supportive folks that we want to be to the other person.
Yeah, we're not listening for cross-examination, as it were.
Yeah.
We're not listening to use your truths against you or anything like that. Now, when I'm listening in therapy, I'm listening for a number of things. Obviously, I'm listening to what the person is saying. I'm helping them bear witness to their own experience. And I may also be listening for inconsistencies because that's my job. To listen for the things that we don't always hear ourselves say, to help us recognize our own narratives, our own arguments, perhaps the things that are getting in the way for, the things that are interfering with our capacity to live our best lives or to truly see and love the people around us. So that's very different, Obviously, your role as a friend might be to do that. Your role as a partner may also be to do that. But first, often it's best to just, if someone is in distress, it's best to just really hear and be curious about their experience, to be beside them as a friend, even if you're their spouse, to be beside them as a friend in understanding and helping them explicate their own experience.
But that's, I want to ask you this, Mitra. That's hard to do. As a therapist, and maybe this is just me, but I sometimes find that easier to do as a therapist because I have
100%.
distance.
Oh yeah.
From my clients as opposed to with my friends, with my family, with my significant other, because often what I'm listening to directly involves me.
Yeah, one of
my own
friends,
defensiveness.
Totally. One of my friends who's also a therapist said, yeah, my superpowers don't work at home. And it's true. I mean, I may say things that a client will kind of take seriously or take to heart, and my kids will roll their eyes, if I try that on them.
God,
or
Mom.
my husband will argue with me or whatever, but he never argues with me. No, not once. But yeah, no, I think that actually one time he said, so we were having an argument and he said, so if this were two clients having this argument, what would you say?
Oh, wow.
Therapality.
This happens to almost every therapist who does marriage counseling. I'm going to say, it's like, what do you think of your own behavior? And it's like, yeah, thanks. No, not a client. Hashtag not a client or a therapist right now, just your partner. So I think context is really important in understanding both your role and your own. We sometimes, especially if we have particular skills in an area as a therapist, we might take ourselves rather seriously in what we're saying. And I think I was once told something like, you're not allowed to use your powers for evil. So, you're not always going to be right, more to the point.
One of the things I'm thinking about for me, and I'm curious for you two, like, what are the signals from other people that let you know that make you feel heard, make you feel listened to, make you feel just understood?
I guess mine is like very baseline where like I have a pause in something I'm saying and they like almost like continue a conversation where they're like, they might ask me something about it or something like that. Just feeling involved in what I'm talking about. Like I don't even necessarily need someone to be looking at me or giving me eye contact. Please don't give me eye contact. I'm
autistic, baby. That's easy.
Yeah. No, yeah. we're on a good page. Like I could, people could be doing something else, but it is the level of engagement when I have that pause where they come back with something that I know that they're listening or something like that. I don't necessarily need we are sat down. This is all that our focus is on. That is it. I mean, because I have ADHD, it would be so mean of me to be like, I turn this around. I need your complete undivided attention. Just me. So yeah, it is mainly that involvement, like that.
Yeah. I think there's two things that come to mind almost at once. And one is they don't interrupt. There's a sense of the unhurried, that there's space for me to mull things over. And even if I pause, they're not rushing to fill that space or to share their conclusions or their rush to fix or anything. So the pause, the space. And their willingness to stay on that same track. So when they do speak, they're willing to inquire more, or to ensure that I am ready to be finished with that topic, say. So they're willing to keep talking about it as long as I need.
Yeah.
Within reason. We're not staying up till 2 a.m, whatever. But you know what I mean? That within
right.
If they sense I have more to say, or if they're curious about something, we can stay with the topic till they understand. Yeah.
So curiosity for Mitra, and I'd never thought about this before, but good listening and good conversations take time.
Yeah.
They're not hurried. They're not rushed. At least not at least for you. So a sense of non-rushed awareness of your needs and curiosity for Treavor. Boy, this is ironic. I don't remember what you said.
She said a much better thing of what I said.
No, you were great. What you said was that when they asked questions, it was they were willing to stay with the topic.
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
sense I had about
yeah.
that. Yeah, and also that they showed interest and involvement in what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, awareness of needs is often where, for me, and what's interesting is none of us said problem solving.
Oh yeah.
No, 100%.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, Mitra, have you tried yoga?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Treavor, you need more kale. That's what you need.
Yeah, probably. Sure, that's what it is. It's kale. Brussels sprouts are good too. Yeah, I think that there is, so not coming in with your own perception of what needs to happen. And maybe also, if you're going to problem solve, ask if that's what the person wants. A lot of times, if somebody's working something out, they may just need to have a rant first. They may just need to talk it through. And then they can hear themselves as well. Like, I think we underrate this piece, but I remember a supervisor of mine once saying, self is listening. And her point was, she was actually doing a course on supervision for us therapists. And she meant that, you know what, we often dole out, not advice exactly, but sort of lifestyle prompts for people, or we talk through what might be helpful. And, make sure you have time for you. What are you doing about time for you? Or what are you doing to make room in your life for X thing? And we hear ourselves saying that, but we don't always remember to do it. And so self is listening. Even when we're speaking, we're kind of also witnessing ourselves. Yeah. And it's really important to get to do that, because I may not know what my solution is for me,
right?
But I'm going to have a better sense of what my solution could be if I've heard myself. And if I'm having to create space, like, just give me, some room, I'm not going to be able to do that very well. We get drowned out enough by shoulds. Oh, I guess I ought to go for walks then, or I should do this, or I ought to do that. And people are very quick to tell us about the kale. So, what about just being able to feel it out for ourselves and go, taking ownership of that kale. If I think it's a good idea, it's going to stick in a way that's different than if someone else tells me I should do yoga or whatever.
Absolutely. Take ownership of the kale.
That's the next t-shirt we make.
Yeah, no, take ownership of the kale.
Yeah.
You gotta take ownership of the...
I think the last time someone made a suggestion like that, when I was like trying to genuinely like tell them something, I was just like, yeah, that's an opinion.
Exactly.
That is an opinion that one can have. That was a choice that was made.
Yeah. I did not. Yeah. Well, an opinion that's asked for is so much more powerful.
Well, and we'll talk about this, we'll talk about this a little later, but there's actually there's a way that I teach workshops, and there's an acronym that I use when I teach workshops for like crisis listening that I still like. I mean, not just because I came up with it, but I think it's really useful.
Yeah, was it?
We'll get into it later. That's a teaser.
Oh my God.
But there's so many teasers.
There's something that I have done with friends, specifically V at the Crafting Muse, and when I get text messages, occasionally I will. This is my autistic self. I will text back. Please press 1 for listening. Please press 2 for reflective statements. Please press 3 for problem solving. Please press 4 for all of the above. Please press 5 to speak with an operator. And it just gets, it's a silly way of getting to the heart of what someone else needs.
Mm-hmm.
And just really asking straight up, what are their needs? Because it sounds like that's really when our needs are fulfilled in the moment, that's how we know that we're being listened to.
Mm-hmm. We underrate the power of listening. You know, when I first trained and we were just starting to see clients, I remember one of my colleagues saying, I just don't feel like I'm doing anything.
The helplessness, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not my job to fix anything. It's my job to help people leverage their own expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's some things they don't know or some things they haven't considered, whatever it is. But that will come.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the most important thing, and there's this sort of Zen order called the Zen Peacemakers Order, and they have these 3 tenets, and it's really stuck with me for a long time. And the first one is not knowing. The idea being when you come into an experience, whatever it is, just set your own agenda and your own theories and ideas, however well you know someone, just set them aside. You are just going to be present. And then bearing witness to whatever they share and giving them that opportunity to bear witness to themselves. And then finally, rather removed from those first 2 things of not knowing and bearing witness, is loving action. And it's not necessarily my loving action. It's maybe my, and where would you like to go from here kind of action, to help them take a loving action in their own lives, for themselves, for those around them, whatever it may be. But that would be the order, right?
Yeah.
Not knowing, bearing witness, loving action.
Being comfortable with your lack of answers. Creating what therapists call a holding space. And just allowing them to be present in that space. And then how would we define loving action? Like that's such a wonderful term. It sounds so wonderful and uplifting, but how would we define that?
Well, listening is also a form of loving action.
Okay.
Right, to start with. And loving action is really about the action that the person owns themselves in this context. In other words, it's not an action imposed from outside. Okay, broader perspective, but you know how it is when like NGOs go into developing nations and they're like, what these people need is food, or what these people need is this thing.
Yeah,
you know what they've forgotten to do? Actually ask them what they need.
So that's our paternalistic top-down thing.
Yeah, the first loving action is what's needed here. What do you need? How can I help you? It's not my agenda when I'm listening, or at least my agenda is to be present and to listen, but I'm in support of what's happening for the other person. And maybe I'm involved in it. Maybe I'm part of it, right?
Oh,
maybe
it's so much harder to do when you're involved, though.
Right? But that's the trick of it, is to be beside the other person. And it's the first thing I tell couples who are struggling is like, okay, you don't have to agree. You don't even always have to understand. Like, you don't have to have a felt sense of understanding. What you need to do is be present for your partner and listen to what's happening for them and try and see it from their perspective. You do need to respect them. Marriage will not last. Relationship will not last. Friendships will not last without respect.
I assume reciprocal.
Won't. Yes, absolutely. So in this instance, you need to be able to participate in that person's experience of themselves and of you, and just hear it. Like, understand without defensiveness, or keep your defensiveness to one side, and just try and be engaged in that person's perspective.
That's so hard.
It's funny how it's the easiest thing in the world when you first get together with someone.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't have a built-up history where you've messed up a bunch of times and history of, you know, little conflicts here and there. I am not actually okay, this is any relationship. This is not me complaining about mine. I love my relationship so much.
Yeah,
but this is any relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Every relationship has developed dynamics within it, some of which work great and some of which are really irritating. And they often are the same thing. Like my partner can be very stubborn, but he's also incredibly tenacious in a really good way. He's faithful and loyal and caring, and he will not give up on things.
It's funny how strengths and weaknesses are often the same thing in different circumstances.
Absolutely. And so sometimes when I'm super irritated, okay, maybe moderately irritated, I try and remember, like, this is the same quality.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many contexts in which I appreciate it, and I have to understand that it's just part of that person. And how can I work with that and be there for them and understand the ways in which that quality also supports me and our life and all of that. So, yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break to remind our viewers of our disclaimer, and then we'll be back to talk a little bit more about this. So stick around, be right back.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.
Hey, I clicked the right button. Hello.
Hey.
We're back. And now we're going to talk a little bit about something called the ring theory. What is that?
Well, that's where you go to your therapist, and if you don't go to another therapist within 7 days,
yeah. And that is a prime example of what we said not to do around putting one's own assumptions aside.
If your therapist says to watch this VHS, don't trust him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I failed to remember, unfortunately, the name of the person who came up with the theory, but I promise you, if you Google the ring theory, you will find it. And it is wonderful. Very, very simply, it is this. I want you to picture a bullseye. Okay. I want you to picture a center ring, a middle ring, another ring, and then possibly a fourth one. You get the idea. Bullseye. And I want you to picture yourself in the center of the bullseye.
Done.
So you are the person in the center who needs to be heard or supported. Okay?
Of course.
Yeah. Now, there might be someone in there with you if whatever it is you're experiencing has happened to you and, say, your partner or your parent or whatever. So you and your siblings might be in the middle if, say, there's something with a parent. But let's just assume to start with that it's just you in the middle and you're being supported by someone close to you. Now they are going to be in the next ring out, okay? You're in the center, they're in the next one. Their task is to comfort in towards you. And if they have any frustrations or upsets, their task is to dump out to the next ring, okay? Now, for instance, if it's your partner and you're the one in distress, the next ring might be a close friend of your partner's or a sibling of your partner's, someone the partner trusts that they can talk to about their own upset. Okay? We can take turns being in the middle. But when we're in the middle, we get to rest, we get to share, and we get to have comfort from someone we trust. And that is their task. Their task is not to dump in towards us. Okay. Now, this came about because the woman who came up with the theory had cancer, and she was in the hospital room, and her husband was there, and a friend came in, and the friend started to angst about how awful it was that this person had cancer, and to tell their partner how terrible it was, and how much they, the friend, would miss their friend who had cancer should that friend die. So The woman with cancer happened to be a psychologist, which is what led to her coming up with this theory. But she remembered feeling very uncomfortable about this and the unfairness of that situation, which is her partner was also in distress. And the friend, who can be located the third or the fourth ring out, was basically dumping in on the friend and on the partner. Can you see how that's not right?
Yeah.
So when you can think about yourself as the person in need, you're in the center. When you think of yourself as a supporter, you're one ring out, you're maybe two rings out, depending on the situation. Your task is to comfort in. When you go elsewhere, you've had a hard day, boy, it was tough, you feel for your friend. You get to go to your spouse or your other friend and say, oh God, that was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
You get to have the comfort. We have to know what our role is.
Mm-hmm.
Are we being the supported? Are we being a ring or two rings out? When we locate ourselves, we can do a better job listening or receiving the care. Sometimes we don't allow ourselves to be in the center, and it's okay. Everyone needs to give and to receive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ring theory.
Well, and it's it reminds me sometimes of different versions of what's taught in dialectical behavior therapy for interpersonal effectiveness skills, and that's realizing that you have needs in a conversation, other people have needs in a conversation, but sometimes your needs or their needs, depending on the situation, are less urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that I've seen done anecdotally is that people have ended up basically pushing down their own needs in situations like that and have overextended because, they've got this idea that I have to be a good listener all the time
Mm-hmm.
in order to, be a good partner, a good friend, and so forth. And this is part of the reason that, when I work with folks, I also talk about, hey, what are your limits? Because, you can't, I tweeted something yesterday that applies to this, that you can't operate at 100% capacity all the time, because the Enterprise didn't travel at warp 9 all the time. You can't give 100% all the time. You have to have some reserves.
Yes, and you have to refuel, right?
Yeah.
If you're going at warp 9 all the time, you're going to have empty tanks real quick, and then you're going to be stuck. So how do you build up your own reserves so that you can be that person that you clearly care to be in terms of a listener?
Well, and that's where the role clarity, and this is part of the reason I like ring theory, role clarity comes in, like, what's my job here? What's my role here? And maybe it's my autistic brain, but I'm like, yes, define parameters. Excellent. Like, oh, in this situation, I am a friend, and here's what a friend can do. Oh no, that is outside what you're asking is outside what friend can do. So I'm going to listen as best I can and say, hey, it sounds like you need X, Y, and Z. Let me give you some resources. Because that ain't me. And at that point, I've had to set limits with people, and that's really hard to do. Like, hey, you've come to me 3 hours a day for 2 weeks straight, talking about this stuff, and it sounds like this is a really big need. I may not be a good resource at this point. And then later having to say, yo, this is interfering with my job.
Yeah, setting boundaries is really important, because if you're feeling panicked about your job or tired after a long day, you might really not be able to listen particularly well. And obviously, if there are emergencies or someone in real distress, you may do your best. But the point is, it has to also work in your life. There has to be space for the listener to be prepared to listen.
Well, so a compatibility of abilities and needs.
Yeah.
And if there's a mismatch of those abilities and needs, then that's either a problem that needs to get resolved. And this is where couples therapists or group therapists are really wonderful for that. Sometimes even personal therapists. But when there's that mismatch, of expectations, of needs, abilities, and so forth, or availability, capacity, and so forth. And this is something that I think a lot of couples where one or both people are ADHD, autistic, or both, that can be a struggle because, with ADHD, we are impulsive. And and autistic folks we have a lower threshold for stress than a lot of other people do. And we can get distressed pretty easily. And those become obstacles to be navigated. And hopefully this is where, again, a good couples therapist can be incredibly helpful in helping to bridge those capacity versus needs and expectations. Yeah.
I think we had one of those that we want to talk about before we get to some listener questions.
Yeah. Really quickly, then I can sum this up pretty quickly. This is something I mentioned earlier in the show, and this is an acronym that I teach a lot to folks when they want to listen to offer good listening to people, and that's the acronym EVOO. And if you can remember extra virgin olive oil, you can remember this. And what EVOO stands for, in a really specific order, is empathize, validate, and offer options, in that order. And the reason it's in that order is because when we, if we jump to problem solving too quickly, it feels minimizing.
Yeah.
And
we could be wrong too.
Yeah, totally. And it again, have you tried yoga? Yes, I live in Seattle. Yes,
I've tried coffee and yoga.
At the same time, I am so relaxed. No, I mean, I can't spit without hitting a yoga studio. Have you tried kale? Yes.
I don't have a choice.
But it's practically in the air we breathe. But empathy, in this case, what I mean by empathy is being able to reflect back the other person's perspective in a way they can recognize. It's not agreeing with them. It's just being able to reflect back their perspective. And that might be as simple as reflecting back their emotional state. It sounds like you're really overwhelmed right now. And then, having them confirm your perspective and then validating something about that, because there's always something to validate. I can, that makes sense how you got to, it makes sense that you're overwhelmed. It makes sense that, and then once you're on the same page, well, okay, so here are my thoughts. Here are some ideas I have, if that's okay. Asking permission is always, it's kind of one of my tricks. And it's a really helpful one, I think, in my therapy practice, asking permission to proceed, because it gives people autonomy still. But empathize, validate, offer options, in that order. That's a skill set I teach in a lot of our workshops.
I like that.
I'm going to add that when you validate, say you're wrong. That's okay.
Yeah.
All the time.
Not the expert.
All the time.
Yeah.
So I say to someone, oh, well, are you feeling some frustration? And they might say, no, it's not frustration. I'm just confused, or I'm just angry, or I feel betrayed, or we're not them. We don't have the expertise in someone else's life, even if they're close to us. We can't know exactly what's going on in their minds. And that's okay. That's the point of listening. I mean, if we already know, why are we having this conversation? I don't know.
Right.
So we're listening to understand.
Yeah.
And letting them correct you. Incidentally, a lot of people, when I do these trainings, when I do these workshops, a lot of people ask the question, but what if I get it wrong? Well, then frequently, not always, because nothing works 100% of the time, but frequently, just admitting you're wrong without defensiveness and allowing them to correct you can itself be a connecting activity. This is, my experience in therapy as well. Like, no, that's not what you mean. Where did I get it wrong? And then being corrected can show a willingness to listen and get on the same page. Getting it wrong is not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
This is not 20 questions. And try not to present it as a statement. Oh, so you're feeling X thing. Are you feeling? Is this maybe? How are you doing with this or that? Right? And then it's not actually as much of a big deal if you get it wrong. But you can't be like, I got it wrong. I'm a piece of crap. I'm terrible at this. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
You're just being present with them.
Right.
Yep.
You're asking questions if it seems right. Can I ask about that? Would you like to tell me more? How are you doing? That helps.
Yeah. Okay, we got time for. I think we're gonna have time for one question. So let's start off with Reaver01, who says, "Question: Is there any other helpful suggestions to being a good listener besides from what I get in the nutshell, letting the person you were listening to gaining or regaining control of the situation, and let them steer in the direction they feel they need to go? Is there any other things you can do?"
Mm-hmm. Open-ended questions that don't include why. And the reason I say this was one of the first tips that one of my former professors and supervisors said to us is that you can generally reframe why questions as how or what. And why tends to invite rationalization and defensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your process? What was your thought process on that?
Or instead of why did you think that?
Yeah. Why did you do that instead of, versus
what was your thought process?
What led to that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why can come across as very accusatory.
Yeah. Why is not a great word.
I get away with it with people I have a very good established relationship with, because we also understand each other's communication styles, and we know each other well enough to know I really mean it quite literally in a very curious way. But it has to be someone I have a very good established relationship with.
I have friends who hear me say it, but it's more of the why.
That's more about the why than anything else. Yeah. There's also because, if they say, well, and then I did that, and you can be like, because, and really you're just kind of listening and helping continue. So those kinds of ums and ahs and sort of like, those are known as minimal encouragers, by the way. And they are a way of helping a person to keep talking. And then, asking them questions about how they landed on that, or can you tell me more about, or would you like to share a little more about that? Or, you know what, hearing you, I feel really curious about, that's the sort of thing that invites continued questions, or continued conversation.
One of the phrases I use frequently is could you help me understand something?
I like that.
And sometimes if I'm seeing a kind of discrepancy somewhere, I might say, well, I'm a little confused. You shared X thing, and now you're saying this thing here, and what's the connection here? Or can you help me understand those thoughts? Because
or
a
help
lot
me
of
connect
us,
those two.
Yeah, we are often contradictory and ambivalent in our thinking. And it helps us to better connect with ourselves if we can see that. But it's not your task to be a therapist. It's your task to be present as a friend, and to also recognize the limits of your capacity as a listener.
Yeah. And the thing is, part of this also comes down to personal style and how you be and what the people around you's needs are. Like the way I deliver questions is going to be different than the way Mitra delivers questions, and it's going to be received differently, partially because of tone, partially because of personal style, partially because of the relationships we build with other people. I had a former supervisor who commented on this, that for some reason I have a way of interjecting humor in therapy in a way that he never could. And it was a stylistic thing that allowed more relaxation and more openness. And I don't know why I'm able to get away with it, but I am. And it's a personal style thing.
Yeah, I do that too. And I think that is true. And I think it's also about considering how that lands for clients. It doesn't land for every client.
No.
And it doesn't land the same way. And sometimes it lands if you've worked with someone for a while, but not early on in therapy, because they don't know you yet. They might think you're making fun of them. So you really have to be careful with humor in that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we got to start wrapping things up.
Kev,
we have your questions, and I highlighted them, so we'll keep those in mind for our end of the season. Going back and grabbing previous questions. So I hope you're around for that one. But friends, where can people find you on the interwebs if they would like to do so?
So I'm at Mitra Jordan on Twitter and at mitrajordan.com on the interwebs. That's it for me.
Yeah,
I'm in a couple of places. Not like this other guy.
Who has the infinity gem of space.
I literally told one of my friends about the show a while ago, and he started watching. He goes, "Yeah, it turns out I already knew who Dr. B was."
Yep.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome. That's not intimidating at all. But you can find me on all the socials at the Dr. B, TheEDocTorB as in boy. And but more importantly, follow Take This org on all the socials. We've actually got some good stuff coming out every day for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is this month. We've been highlighting our burnout resources last week. We're starting to get into some other stuff this week. But again, you're going to have an opportunity to support us by buying some really cool Champions of Psychology apparel starting next Monday.
Yeah.
So excited.
So we hope you're all excited for that one. We'll have links to put in the chat next week after it's started. Yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much to Jordan and Mars for moderating in the chat and doing a fantastic job. Thank you to Codename Entertainment and Take This for letting us have an opportunity to have these discussions. I believe everything is normal this week for the schedule. I don't know. Again, I'm not in charge of that anymore. You got to go bug Sean. You can check out our Reddit, Discord, and Twitter for that. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Champions of Lore. So until next week, take care of yourself.
Champions of Psychology is meant as education and entertainment. It is not a substitute for medical advice or professional counseling. Discussion of mental health topics will be primarily rooted in research and the personal experiences and self-disclosures of the hosts. While we can provide generalized education and possible mental health resources, we cannot offer any recommendations, advice, or opinions for any specific persons, cases, or situations. We provide these resources and links at our sole discretion, but have not necessarily vetted or reviewed any resource. We assume no liability for the use of the information or resources on these sites, and we encourage you to use your own best judgment.